such as Fusion middleware. So these rich data applications sit underneath these CRM applications, and on top of it, which is this line, it sits that set of CX applications that I talked about earlier, whether it's around web content management or web commerce, including index-guided search, or knowledge management, or the social that I was talking about earlier. What we're seeing is a massive interest from our customer base to actually address that particular issue that I talked about customer experience. Most organizations have pieces of this in their organization, right? They have solved one little channel for one particular problem, but they're really looking for the big picture because they realize that, doing something on Twitter or doing something on Facebook without incorporating that from a strategy perspective, as well as from a system perspective in their overall go-to-market, is only going to sub-optimize what they're doing with their customers. And that's obviously where we're looking to help. So that's in a nutshell, why we see the need to focus on customer experience, what we've done in the last 2 years to address that particular area, and to explain a little bit, super high level about what the areas are that we're addressing here. So with that, I am going to hand over to Doug. Before that, actually, I'm going to show you some customers, some APAC customers, because I talked a lot about, this vendor is number one, and this vendor is number one, etc. Well, that normally comes with logos, right? So a lot of our CX customers, if you will, are live and ready to talk with others. You see a lot of big logos here, such as eBay. I mentioned that earlier. Our customers that have bought this normally bought that. You see Vodafone here. You see also companies that are known in the location. For example, SurfStitch in Australia is very well known. Good Guys is very well known, but if you don't live in Australia, you don't know that brand. All of these guys are leveraging either one or multiple of our CX applications. And I had the international slides about it as well. We have hundreds and hundreds of live customers on our CX applications, and some of these are the really well-known retail brands and finance brands and telco brands out there, because the fact that Starbucks is using some of our CX applications probably helps them provide better business results. So I'm happy to talk more later in the Q&A about that. Okay, so definitely with that.
Thanks, Michel. Before we get into HCM, I'll just extend a little bit on what Yen said around the HCM side. If we look at the last few years, we've obviously seen an explosion around CRM and the whole area of cloud CRM, SaaS deployments. And the next wave that has come through is HCM. We're seeing quite a big take-up of the human capital management product sets into the cloud environment. And that's logical. It's not out of whack as to where we're at. What we're also seeing within Asia Pacific, of course, is country by country, as demand grows, we're seeing pressure on salaries. So countries that were low-cost suppliers are all of a sudden now becoming higher cost. As the cost of labour goes up, the pressure goes up, the retention requirement, the cost to retain my staff becomes more important. And I would put out that probably the most vivid example of that right now is India. The explosion in salaries that is starting to occur in there, the pure competition. And what we're now seeing is that requirement to retain our staff. That it is better to treat our staff well, to spend some time to look at them, to put some work into them, and to make sure that they're well off, than to lose them and then lose a period of time while we recruit, get someone in, skill them up, make them useful again. And we get this massive gap. So moving forward, we see this as a logical direction of recruiting, but it's not just recruiting, it's then recruiting, talent management, the whole life cycle of our workforce. We're also starting to see that explode on the internet. Nowadays, most recruiters, all recruiters I would argue, use LinkedIn and other places like that as a primary source to find qualified personnel. We also see this as a next wave for big data. So looking at our roadmaps forward at HCM, one of the key things we're working on over the next 24 plus months out will be a continuation of grabbing that information and utilising it and being able to troll through it from a people perspective, not just the sorts of stuff that Michel was talking about from a customer perspective, which of course is very focused right now. I should stop using the word right now. That's important. Anyway, if we look at it from an adoption side, Yen mentioned that we've got customers like, let's look at Peach Aviation in Japan, low-cost carrier, airline starting up from scratch. wanted to get up and running very quickly. They're obviously going to have rapid expansion of their pool of resources. They've got quite a diverse pool of resources because they've got to have staff on the planes, they've got to have check-in staff, they've got to have air crew, all of these sorts of things. But they wanted to get up and running quickly. Cloud was an obvious solution for them. Fusion was an obvious solution for them in the area of talent management and recruitment and their HR. So then Ardent Leisure, and we'll go through into Ardent Leisure a bit more in a second. Quite a good drill down into them. They're a very interesting company. They were here at Open World this week. Some of you may have seen them up on stage talking about their experiences with both Taleo and Fusion and what they've done there. From a Taleo perspective, our acquisition of Taleo was very, very strategic for us. Very strong in recruitment, very strong in learning, very strong in cloud. So the acquisition of Taleo was very much an adjunct to what we were already doing in the Fusion HCM world. And that direction of recruitment and learning, as I said, is key when you look at the life cycle of a worker, workforce life cycle, and we can start to predict and look through that. We've also got quite a few of our global deployments, our big customers who are deploying globally using HCM throughout Asia Pacific. And so a couple of examples are given there. What we're going to be looking at when we look at customers as to why they've taken on these products and when we talk to them, the first thing is obviously they have a need. You cannot give software to someone unless they've got a need for it. And so they've seen the problem, they've identified the problem, and it generally comes from the HR department. The HR department saying, I am in trouble. The biggest issue we've got right now, again, sorry, using the cloud directions, is that when we do that, to date, we have had niche providers. The niche providers have included Taleo in the past. So I would turn around as a cloud vendor and I would call up the recruiting area of a business and say, I bet you're not doing recruiting very well, why don't you buy our software? It's cloud, we can have it up and running very, very quickly, and you're fixed. And I have a saying around this, which I may have bored some of you with before. The great thing about cloud software is it's OPEX, not CAPEX. The bad thing about cloud software is it's OPEX, not CAPEX. That sounds stupid, and I'm pretty stupid, but the real reality of it is, by going OPEX, I can go directly to the business and I can sell the software to the business. If I go CAPEX, the one thing that we've had for years and years within corporations is the ability to capture any IT purchases through the CAPEX system. So it would have to go to the IT department and they would say, no, this does not comply with our directions that we're trying to take from an IT strategy and breakthrough. Now, a department can go and buy software. So what you've got now is the great thing, the department's fixed. The recruiting department is now happy, they've got their software. Guess what? They've just broken a 15-year IT strategy. So now the business, the customer, has become an integration house again. They've got to stitch together all these pieces of software because there's recruiting software. Now there's talent management software. There's all these bits within the HR department. There's payroll, which just don't work together anymore. The individual person feels very happy because their problem's fixed, but they've created massive issues. So this was a key driver for us within Oracle is enterprise software. That's our business. That's what we do better than anyone else. And that's what we worked on with Fusion, is how do we make sure we can stitch this through as one solution from point to point. We have a problem, it might be in talent. We have a problem, it might be in recruitment. So we designed it to coexist. So we can take on components of the software as and when they're needed, in the areas that they're needed from, to extend our IT capability in the HR space, and in fact in any of the spaces that we talked about, while leaving other areas stable. So this was key when customers looked at it, that need to have the coexistence, the ability to have next-gen HR, no different to the sales organisations like the flash and glamour and to look nice. And the finance department's more stable, they're not as worried about this, but HR departments want to see this information being presented. Inbuilt embedded analytics was very, very, very important. The ability to have analytics embedded in our systems about our people. So what we can do now, and again, this is out of our acquisition strategies that we've gone through with Hyperion, with the S-Base Cube, with our middleware that we've got, we are able to then start to run predictions around the likely loss of a person. We can put in salary history, we can put in performance appraisal history, we can put in a range of different facets, and we can start to predict people who are likely to leave the company. We can also look at what is the impact of their loss. Is it going to hurt us badly if we were to lose that person? And we can start to take strategies and tasks to retain the person, you know, before anything happens. And it's a learning algorithm. So as we go along and we find people do leave over time and we get their feedback as to why they left, we can build that in. And it gets better and better. And that's because we've got analytics in there that is current, real-time and predictive. In the past, analytics was looking in the rearview mirror telling us how we're running our business in the past, not how it's running now and what we need to do in the future. So these were very, very important for us. As I said, cloud or on-premise we see as a major driver around this, very much around open standards. The ability to plug and play with open standards, drive down our cost of maintenance of this software. Let's have a quick look. Here's an airline you may have heard of. They bought Taleo. Big problem with recruiting. Trying to get people on, the sheer numbers that have to come through, new aircraft types come in, they have to maintain, they have to crew and staff, and this is a massive issue for large organisations. It's not just airlines, it's any large organisation, they're always in hiring mode, no different to us. You're never out of hiring mode. And so how do you streamline that? How do you make that as efficient as you can? And in the past you paid a lot of money to a recruiting agency to do that, and you tried to hide your brand in some cases. What they've found, Qantas had a brand, it was very valuable, people were interested in joining the corporation, they were very proud to be able to put that out and say, come and join us. And Taleo, from a recruiting perspective, very much the recruiting end, saw massive advantages for Qantas in their recruiting side. They were able to hit their numbers, and they've made that a much more streamlined operation coming in. Now linking it into the rest of their system. Now here I talk about what the company I was talking about before, Ardent Leisure. Now Ardent Leisure is a very interesting company. They actually own a range of functions. They own Dreamworld in Australia, so they own an amusement park. They own and operate all of the bowling alleys, the AMF bowling alleys around Australia. They own gymnasiums. They own marinas. They have an operation over here in America that they're running as well. And a very broad spectrum of product sets that they have, a lot of contract labour. So very much driven by seasonal adjustment. So it's holiday time, everyone goes to the theme park, so we have to put on more staff. So something that is very, very flexible to handle that. And also you're talking about people who do not necessarily have high IT skills. It's not in their world to have to necessarily deal with a computer every day. This is the key with mobility and these next generation systems, is making sure they're simple and easy to use. That was one of the key things that Ardent Leisure wanted to look at, was to make sure it was simple, easy and intuitive for their people to utilise. So another one, very good success. They've actually got both Fusion and Taleo side by side, and they're working with us as we integrate those together to get that complete enterprise system. So a very good one from that side. I think we'll drop in a Q&A.